Just yesterday, President Barack Obama released his deficit reduction plan, which would be a $3 trillion plan that would save $3 trillion over the next decade. And surprisingly, his plan is going to increase taxes on the wealthy, something that I think most progressives didn't really expect. Now, I want to give you guys an outline of what his deficit plan consists of. It turns out that it will allow the 2001 and 2003 high-income tax cuts to expire. It will also raise taxes on those making more than $250,000 annually. They will also tax carried interest of hedge fund managers as ordinary income. So when they make money off of investing other people's money, they will pay their fair share of taxes, not just 15% as they have been doing. Obama will also eliminate oil and tax subsidies, which will save $4 billion annually. He will get rid of corporate tax loopholes, something that I am certainly a fan of. He will require the financial services industry to pay back taxpayers any costs associated with the Troubled Asset Relief Program, also known as TARP. That stands at $48 billion. He will save $1 trillion over the next 10 years in war savings by bringing troops home from Iraq and Afghanistan. And he will also make cuts in Medicare, but only to healthcare providers and pharmaceutical companies. So we have Ilona Minkovsky on the show today from The Ilona Show on RT. And Ilona, first, I want to get your opinion of all of these proposals in general. Do you think that these are good proposals?
Yeah, overall, I really do think that these are good proposals. And I think that, you know, as you mentioned out there, that there are a lot of progressives that weren't exactly expecting this to come from the president. I think a lot of people are finally happy because instead of having this guy that constantly wants to compromise, we never really know where he's going to go, if he's going to give up Social Security. Suddenly, we have a president that's deciding to be a president, not to compromise anymore. He's saying now that he's going to take on the Republicans because don't forget, of course, that John Boehner just last week, just a couple days ago, already said that tax cuts are going to be off the table. And now you have the president saying that there's even going to be a veto threat, that if this super committee doesn't pair, you know, of course, cuts to entitlements along with tax increases, I think I said tax cuts, then he's absolutely going to veto it. So now finally he's showing some power. Finally, he's showing that he wants to be a leader. And, you know, I think a lot of this is part of gearing up for the campaign for 2012, realizing that there is a lot of anger, a lot of discontent from the general population, and a lot of that comes from the inequality that we're seeing in this country. And so in that case, I think that he's targeting the right things here. If you're going to talk about, you know, some of these tax increases, I personally think it's a little bit of a gimmick to throw in the $1.1 trillion in war savings as if he just came up with that brilliantly because, well, these are already scheduled, planned war savings that are coming from drawing down troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. And that was already planned. And, you know, if I had it my way, then we would be saving even more there. I'm more concerned about how much the wars are costing us. But overall, I think it's a good plan. Overall,
I do believe it's a good plan as well. And I love that you mentioned that, you know, he used the war savings as a political strategy in this proposal. I would definitely like to see us save a significantly more amount of money when it comes to war spending. But, you know, I want to focus more on something that you touched on in your last answer. Is this really the Barack Obama, the real president that we voted for, or is this just campaign Obama? Is he just positioning himself for a campaign? Is he just being feisty with the Republicans for now, and then after he gets reelected, well, maybe all of a sudden the concessions will continue?
Well, you know, I hope not. I hope that this is going to be feisty Barack Obama because I think that the compromising Barack Obama realized that that didn't really work, right? We saw a lot of that surrounding the debt ceiling debate. And at that point, I think he was looking at the fact, you know, that a lot of polls were saying that Americans were more frustrated with Republicans, that they blamed more of the debt debacle on the Republican Party. But Americans also want results. They just don't want compromise all the time without something tangible, something that they can look at. And so now we've seen, you know, a lot of his approval ratings also start to plummet. And so I think he's starting to realize that we want a different president. We want a different kind of leader. And why not go along with that? You know, and part of what we're seeing here, too, and others out there, like Ezra Klein have mentioned it, is that this is more of a populist Obama. He's going with the populist message. And I think that that is not only going to work for the elections in 2012, because, as I said, there are a lot of Americans that are just fed up, angry about the inequality, angry about the state the economy is in. But I also think that it's a good message. We do have a bunch of elites that run this country that don't have to pay their fair share in taxes, that also, let's not forget, don't get tried for any of their crimes, if you want to talk about the financial crisis and all the Wall Street bankers. So at least let's talk about, some kind of equalizing factor here and bringing them down. Then, of course, though, Obama is the epitome of one of the presidents when it comes to this revolving door and using the elites. And there's actually a book that we've been talking about too, Ron Susskind's book out there, that talks about the people that he's decided to surround himself with, which is, Larry Summers, which is Tim Geithner. It's the Wall Street guys. And if he's going back to his campaign guys, the Robert Reichs of the world, then I really think that that's going to be a good step, and I hope that he sticks with it.
Absolutely, and I do think Barack Obama has surrounded himself in this Wall Street bubble, which is why his approval ratings have dropped significantly. I mean, those dismal approval ratings that we talked about just last week. And I remember, Ilona, you were interviewing me on your program last week, and you asked me whether or not Barack Obama had the opportunity or even had the desire to redeem himself, and if it was even possible for him to get reelected. And it's just so fascinating how things can change so much in 1 week. I mean, that was just last week we were talking about that. And now all of a sudden he comes out with this feisty proposal. He says that he will use his veto power. And it's really something that I think is making progressives happy and skeptical at the same time, because you don't know whether or not he's going to be able to be this strong throughout the negotiation process. Now, another thing I wanted to ask you about, Ilona, is the Buffett rule, which is a very unpopular proposal among the GOP. Now, tell me a little bit about the Buffett rule. What will it eventually do?
Well, Warren Buffett, why it's called the Buffett rule, of course, realized that, he's paying more, or he's paying less in his taxes than some of the secretaries or some of the people that have, the lowest jobs in his own office. And that's just not right. And so what this Buffett rule will do, and so far the president hasn't really told us how much is going to bring in an extra revenue, but it would set up some kind of a standard that if you make $1 million or more, you have to pay the same amount as middle-class families. And of course, the GOP has gone all out. We saw Paul Ryan, we saw Lindsey Graham talking about this, and they're all saying that this is class warfare.
Right.
But, it's only class warfare for Republicans when they think that it's the rich that are being targeted. Because if you look at Paul Ryan's own plan, if you look at a lot of the proposals from Republicans, it's not class warfare when you're asking lower income families to give up some of the programs that they need a lot. It's not class warfare when you're asking the middle class to maybe, have a tax hike. It's only class warfare if it's directed towards one part of the population, which are the rich here. But I think that it makes a lot of sense. And the president said that himself yesterday. He said, this isn't class warfare. It's just common sense. It's math.
Absolutely.
You should not have the most rich individuals in the country that are paying less taxes than middle-class families. And a lot of people, I'm not quite sure about that, but would take it a lot farther. They say that that's at least what they should be paying. They shouldn't be paying just the same amount. They should be paying more.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I love how the GOP is speaking out and saying it's class warfare when there's been a class warfare waged against the middle class and working class over the past 3 decades. Now, GOP Congressman John Fleming was on MSNBC last night, and he was basically arguing that paying too much taxes is going to hurt him in creating new jobs. I want to show you the video and get your thoughts on it. Let's watch.
With all due respect, Congressman, the Wall Street Journal estimated that your businesses, which I believe are Subway sandwich shops and UPS stores, very successful, brought you last year over $6 million.
Yeah, that's before you pay 500 employees, you pay rent, you pay equipment and food. The actual net income of that was only a mere fraction of that amount.
So you're saying that if you have to pay more in taxes, you would get rid of some of those employees? These are not as successful businesses as what
I would say that since my net income, and again, that's the individual rate that I told you about, the amount that I have to reinvest in my business and feed my family is more like $600,000 of that $6.3 million. And so by the time I feed my family, I have, maybe $400,000 left over to invest in new locations, upgrade my locations, buy more equipment.
You do understand, Congressman, that the average person out there who's making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year, when they hear that you only have $400,000 left over, it's not exactly a sympathetic position. You understand that?
Well, again, class warfare has never created a job. And that's people that will not get jobs. This is all about creating jobs, Chris. This is not about attacking people who make certain incomes.
And of course, he failed to mention in that interview that giving tax cuts to the wealthy does not, in fact, create jobs. It leads to outsourcing, and it leads to them hoarding their money in their bank accounts. Now, what did you think about that video, Ilona? What did you think about that interview?
Oh, well, for starters, we heard that class warfare line being thrown out again. But it's really ludicrous, and this is why people hate Washington. This is why they hate the representatives and their, unfortunately, elected officials. I mean, at the end of the day, you don't have to elect them, but in order to be elected for any kind of position of power these days, you have to be rich. But it's true. When you hear about somebody who's making $400,000 a year complain about the fact that he's only making $400,000 a year, it's really hard when you have more than 46 million Americans right now that are living below the poverty line. That means that for a family of four, they're making about $22,000 a year, right? That's nothing. It also is hard for at least the 15 million Americans, that doesn't include those that are underemployed, to hear these congressmen complain about things like this, complain about the fact that they're only creating, only making $400,000 a year. And you make a really good point there, too. What we're seeing is we're seeing the banks not loaning any money, right? We're seeing them sit on a bunch of cash. We're seeing the corporations do the exact same thing. We're seeing them use offshore tax havens, and we're seeing them take jobs overseas. So I think that we've heard enough of the scaremongering that if you dare touch business, if you dare do that, they're not going to hire more people. They're already not hiring more people. So at some point, I think you got to do a little pushing, a little scaring back.
Absolutely. And it's definitely good news that Barack Obama is starting to listen to the American people. Hopefully he continues being strong. Hopefully he doesn't fall into the negotiation process that he's fallen into so many times, where he makes concessions and he lets Republicans get away with what he wants. I love that he's throwing the veto word in there. And, I hope that he really follows through on what his proposals are. Thank you so much for joining us, Ilona. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And I definitely think that it's something that we have to watch here with Obama. I'm still a little bit skeptical, too. But I do think it's exciting. We'll see. I don't know if that means the trigger effect is going to have to happen with the super committee, because it's going to fall apart, because they already said no raises on taxes. Right. But let me just make one final point, too. Let's not forget what hypocrites these people are, too, is that they want lower taxes, and yet they want to continue waging war all over the world. And sorry, you just can't do both at the same time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us.